Hi, I'm Ron Perlman. As you know, there are many victims still struggling in the wake of Hurricane Sandy. Some of them are your fellow artists. I'm honored to announce that the Screen Actors Guild Foundation is partnering with the SAG Motion Picture Players Welfare Fund and the AFTRA Foundation to create a Superstorm Sandy Emergency Assistance Fund to provide financial support to active SAG-AFTRA members affected by this tragedy. Each organization has generously kicked in significant funding to start getting help to SAG-AFTRA members as quickly as possible. We've got over $250,000. But of course, with more money, we could do even more to help. That's why I'm urging those of you who can to make a donation. With your help, we can offer much needed support to our fellow artists during this difficult time. So if you're a SAG-AFTRA member who has been affected by Sandy, I strongly urge you to apply for this special assistance now. Remember, if you need help, ask. If you can't help, give. We're all in this together. Thank you. Visit sagfoundation.org for full details.
So as Mr. Perlman stated, how many people know people on the East Coast, by a show of hands? Wow, that's a lot. And we are live streaming tonight, so there's people potentially watching from somewhere on the East Coast or across the US. And it's incredible what happened, and we are here to help. We had phase one, which was to just help with bare necessities, and now we're entering phase two with livelihood. How do we help people sustain and rebuild? If you've heard the news, there's still issues with housing and hotels and organization, and there still needs to be help. So we encourage you, if you have not given yet, please go to the website, please give. If you have and are still able to give a little bit more, please do so. Anything can help, any amount can help. So please find some way to do that, because you never know when we will need help. And the second part of that is, if you know someone, all those hands, if you know someone in New York or on the East Coast that does still need help, they can call SAG Foundation and we can connect them and we can make it work somehow through the Actors Fund and everything like that. Great. I'm excited for this panel. We have such an amazing experience. 30 plus years. We were having conversations. There was people in business for 32 years. It's amazing how much stories and information we're going to get tonight. So first, we're going to start off with the moderator. The moderator is an actor. He also is an adjunct faculty member at Cal Lutheran. And this is Markus Flanagan. Give him a hand, please.
Thanks, man. Hi. Good evening. Yeah, my name is Markus Flanagan. I'm a 26-year member of SAG. I'm a working actor. I also, I do teach. I studied at the Neighborhood Playhouse, so I teach Mr. Meisner's work. And I wrote a book called One Less Bitter Actor, The Actor's Survival Guide. And from that, it was my idea that I would write down every great question I got from somebody in class about how you take what you learned in class and apply it to the business side. As a working actor, I took it as, how can you not know this? It's also practical. Then I realized you only learn it by doing it. And so these panels, Life Raft and SAG Foundation, just follow us on the same mandate of, if we don't share information that we've learned along the way, and we're going to have a collective of about, I don't know, 150 years of experience up here tonight. If we don't share the information, it just makes it harder for the next group of artists. And why? Why would you ever make it harder on a fellow artist? So that's my reason for being here tonight, and I'm going to introduce them. I'm not going to give you the biographies. They're going to speak for themselves. Okay? So Bud, I'm going to introduce you first to Bud Burton, and he's accompanied by John Kelly. John's just going to help him up the stairs. Bud looks the part of a legend, and he is. And please, John Kelly, join us. And then Marilyn Szatmary, I'm sorry, and David Shaul. Okay, I think we should go ladies first, if that's all right with you, Bud. And then we'll go age before beauty, all right? All right. Marilyn, please, just a little about yourself and whatever made you want to become an agent. And
okay, this is the frightening thing, is talking on the microphone. I literally fell into being an agent women of my generation, your choices were either you were an elementary school teacher or you were a nurse. And I started college, and I thought, I don't really want to be an elementary school teacher. So my mother made me go to secretarial school, and they placed me at the William Morris Agency. I didn't even know what it was. And I have spent my whole life, since I was 19 years old, representing actors. And I feel blessed to have fallen into a career that I absolutely loved and that was incredibly satisfying to me. And I look around me at other people who have not been as blessed as I have been.
Oh, very well. Very well.
My name is Bud Burton Moss, and everybody thought here that Mr. Kelly, 30-some years in the business was a lot of years. I probably am going on my 60th year, if anybody can believe that in show business. On the way over here, I was writing about an hour-and-a-half speech, and I had to cut it down. And I wrote a book just recently, and I wanted to bring it, and they said, you know, we don't want you standing outside trying to sell it. So those that are here that want to jot down the name of the book, you can get it on Amazon.com. My dear support team, Valerie Fee is here, and Julie McCarran, my ghostwriter. Raise your hand, my favorite editor. There you are in the back. And the book is called, for the sake of a better title, in very small print, and all I got was 10%. And it takes you through the early days of television in the 60s, when nobody really knew what a half-hour television series was. And I was blessed to work with people like Barbara Eden, our dear Larry Hagman, who just passed away, Tom Bosley, Mia Farrow, and the list went on and on and on. So if you have time and you have $10 or $11, go get the book. There's a lot of funny stories in there about my years in show business, some nice pictures. And if you get the book and you can track me down, I'll even sign it for you one of these days. Anyhow, thank you for coming. My dear friend, Mr. Kelly.
Well, I'm John Kelly, and I've been in the business for 32 years. It seems like a long time to me, until I sit next to Bud. I have a small company called Bresler Kelly. I've been with my partner since I graduated from college. In 1981, we started, and we've been doing the same thing for folks like you for that whole time. It's a different kind of agency. We've been called sort of anti-agents because our approach has been more what now is known as a management style. And when we first started doing it, it was a little more personal than what other people were doing. And it's worked for us for a long time, and we're still doing it.
Thanks very much. Mr. Shaul?
Hello, I'm David Shaul. I'm the chicken on this panel, I'm told. I've only been doing this 28 years. I started in New York. When I got out of drama school, I have a degree in theater management. I went to work in New York. I was actually Meg Simon and Frank Human's intern was my first showbiz job, and at the time they cast all of Neil Simon's plays and Kel Churchill's plays and Athol Fugard's plays. Sorry. Better. And then I, like Marilyn, fell into agenting because my best friend Mark Redanty, who Bauman, Redanty, and Shaul, he's the person who runs the New York office. And I went to the same school. He's older. We weren't in school together, but we worked in the same building, would see each other, and he got me a job answering the phones at the company we now own. I stayed in New York for between 14 and 15 years before I moved to LA about 14 years ago. At the time, the company was called Bauman Hiller. Richard Bauman and Wally Hiller started the company a very long time ago, and Mark and I ran the New York office, and then when Wally Hiller passed away 15 years ago, I moved out, and Mark and I became partners with Richard Bauman, and then he subsequently retired and has passed away as well. So that's the evolution of Bauman, Redanty, and Shaul.
Great. Now, since we have all this history, I would like to just start before I get into the hard questions. Historically speaking, so maybe we'll go just in order. Again, ladies first. Historically speaking, can you give us an overview of what you think actors now face that they didn't? Was there a golden era when it was just easier, better, and getting an agent was easier and there was more talent in the streets, or is it about the same?
The business really, unfortunately, has changed enormously. I mean, for somebody like myself, I spent half of my career in New York in the theater, and that was a totally different business where actors could do a one-scene part at Manhattan Theater Club, and the casting directors would all go, and from that, I'll put it this way, I'm of the Meryl Streep generation, so you could do a Broadway show and you could become a movie star. I was fortunate enough to move out to California in the height, which was probably somewhere around 23, 24 years ago, of the Mike Ovitz days at CAA, when the agent was king, and the deals that people were able to negotiate, culminating, I think, at the height of the business with the Friends deals, which were $1 million an episode. Then what happened in 1996, the federal government did away with what they called the Sin Fin laws, and they allowed the networks to own television shows. Up until that point, the networks were not allowed to. The studios would produce and the networks would pay them a licensing fee. Once that happened, the networks started to buy studios, and they bought movie studios and they bought television studios, and they whittled the business down till there were like 4 people, 4 studios, whatever, who totally controlled the business. So it really became harder. What used to be ordinary, when you did a deal for an actor for a contract for a series, you would do a 6-year deal, 6.5-year deal. If the show was successful, you would go in the 3rd year and you would renegotiate. And that was standard procedure in the business. Everybody did it. It was the expectation. And once the network started to own shows, that changed. It also was the advent of reality television because those shows were cheaper to make. And I think I may have talked too much, but that's how the business has changed.
That's helpful. Would you like to add something, Bud?
The only thing I really want to add is the actor today really has to be so multifaceted. When I started out, and I grew up in the business, my dad was a film editor, my uncle was a famous producer at Metro, and I saw the early days of Hollywood when there were 7, 8 studios. There was Metro, there was Fox, there was Paramount, and each studio had maybe 5 or 6 casting directors, and that was it. And then all of a sudden, Lou Osserman said, one of these days, watch out, there's going to be a little box on your living room table that's going to be called television. And all of a sudden, before you knew it, these studios that had only 6, 7 casting people, all of a sudden in came another 10, 15 casting people for the early days of television. And the actors who originally only had one thing to do, and that was go in and meet a casting director and read for a movie, now you have to be able, and it's so frustrating for the agents and for the managers to see what happens to an actor today who has to either put themselves on tape or go into a cold, stark room with a casting director and a camera and stand up against the wall and do a professional performance, which then will go to the producers and the directors and the networks to see them. And it's tough. And I feel sorry for those poor actors today that have to do it, but this is the nature of the beast.
John, anything to add?
Well, I find that the business for actors is much less, it's much more impersonal than it used to be. I think there was a time when I started, on a weekly basis, we used to go out of the office and go to the studios and meet casting directors and pick up episodic television scripts and movie of the week scripts and feature scripts and then pitch your actors and you know, it was all done. Now, for the most part, there aren't even phone conversations involved in that kind of business. It's almost all electronic. And part of the skill of an agent or a manager is advocating your client and being able to persuade somebody that you know, they can do a job better than somebody else. And that element of agenting is kind of a lost art because there are agents in the business now, I would a good proportion of them probably, who have never had to sell somebody on the phone because it's been electronic since they got into the business. And for older people like us, it's harder because that was that was the fun part of the business, that communication and the bonding that you did with other people, and making friends with a business affairs person over a deal that maybe you couldn't even make, but the process of going back and forth and all that was the foundation of good relationships. And I find that those are missing for us in the business, and if they're missing for us, then I'm sure that they're missing for the actors. Now, a lot of people are young enough in the business that they don't know what they're missing.
That's right.
Because it's been this way since they came, but it used to be different. Somebody would write a part in a movie, and they would bring in 3 actors, and a director would work with those 3 actors until they found somebody that could do the part the way they wanted it done. Now they write a part in a movie, they put 300 actors on tape, and if somebody happened to guess what the director was looking for, they might hit the jackpot. But the opportunity to ply your craft as an actor is definitely diminished over my time as an agent.
I'm going to come back to that. Do you want to add something to that?
I think that I would just add more to what John said, and that I remember being in New York, and in New York there is just more traffic in your office in general. It's a more condensed city than Los Angeles, obviously. But I do remember our first fax machine, that's right, fax machine, and thinking, we're not going to see these people as much. And sure enough, within a year of the fax machine, which is now outdated now, no one uses a fax machine hardly, we started seeing less of our people, because people would say, oh, I don't have to come get that material, just fax it to me, which then became email it to me or whatever. So certainly one of the things I started in 1984, since 1984, that's changed is over the years, the contact between actor and agent, manager, or even casting director gets less and less and less, seemingly every year. And that's hard, because I think it ends up falling on you to go and guess the performance they're looking for, rather than go into a room with a director and be directed and get feedback. You just put it on tape and, like John said, see if that's what they wanted, see if it sticks.
And I think,
Marilyn?
and what David is saying, I had an instance with a client who was out in California. They were looking for a role in New York, for a recurring role on a series. And my client called me, she says, I'm going to New York. So I called the casting director in New York, and I said, so-and-so's coming to New York. She said, oh, great, she can be put on tape here. I said, no, she's coming where everybody is, so you can see her. And she started to laugh. She said, Marilyn, we put everybody on tape, and then they all take it home. They don't come in. We never see them. That's the way the business has become. So it's not even that it's something that's happened just in, California. And also what has happened with all the electronics, they put people on tape over the whole world.
Correct.
I mean, if you look at how many English actors now are doing American accents on American television, or Australian actors. So it's that makes it really hard, unfortunately.
I think also, and most of you are probably aware, that in the late 60s, early 70s, the breakdown service emerged. And it was kind of an amazing period, because for X amount of dollars, the, what's his name, Gary Marsh would literally deliver to your office in a little brown envelope and slip it under your door, the breakdowns for that day or that week that they were casting. And we would live and die by the breakdowns. And you would hope that
It meant you didn't have to read scripts anymore, because they broke them down for you.
You know breakdowns, right? Everyone knows
Does everybody know the breakdown service?
Yes.
We still get them every day, that we just get them
We
electronically.
get them on the
all
computer
day,
now,
every day.
and I find myself at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning going through the breakdowns on the computer, and I hope that there's a Mary Jo Slater out there, or a Mark Hirschfeld, or some casting director that I knew 50 years ago that I can just call and say, I just submitted Louise Linton, for an example, who's here this evening, for such and such part. And they'd say, well, go ahead and make the submission. And I said, well, can we set up an appointment? And they said, no, let's get the submission and send the picture to the producer, whomever it is. And that in itself has really changed the whole complexion of what our industry is today. And it's difficult, because you believe that you represent some talented actors. I've represented a lot of name actors over the years. And 90% of the casting people really don't know who some of these talented actors were or are, that go back to the to the late 70s, the 80s, and the 90s.
We live in the point and click era in our lives, and it certainly has spilled over into show business. I remember Richard Bauman talking about putting on a suit and getting all dressed up and going to the studios, getting a script, sitting outside, reading it, and then going in and pitching his ideas after he'd sat in the lobby reading the script. Now, that don't happen today.
Well, that's a casting director, right? That's
But
in
this is
theory.
back in the 60s.
Right, but in theory, that's what they're supposed to be doing, right?
Correct.
Okay. I want to just go back. I want to touch the contact with actors from an agent's point of view. You say it doesn't happen anymore, and you say that almost with, melancholy.
It is with melancholy.
How much contact do agents and even friends of yours, younger friends, how much do they want from actors? And what do you think is appropriate contact? None. None, Marilyn.
That's
She's
not it at
raising her
all.
hand.
I'm going to say right now that I worked for my clients. I get 10%, they get 90%. We were always on the same team. I wanted, and I always encouraged actors to call if they heard about a project, or so that they would, let us know what it was, and we would let them know. Maybe we had submitted them, people weren't interested, or whatever was going on. But that's one of the things that really I find very problematic, unfortunately, about the business today, because I always considered myself and my clients on the same team. I worked for them. And I think actors lose that in the business out here. And I hear stories about people who are afraid to call their agents, and what if I call too many times, and will they drop me? I never dropped an actor in my life. That's not really true. I dropped one actor because he didn't treat me nicely. That was really the only reason, because he was rude to me. But I don't know, it's true.
We dropped
It
one
really
who
is
said he
true.
should only have to pay 5%.
So he went out and found a 5% agent, didn't
No,
he?
he got his lawyer to do his business
That's
for him. He's a very
5%.
well-known actor.
But,
Oh, well.
But that's, I think
Okay.
that's, a lot of that has been lost, and especially I know for those of us who come from New York and come from the theater, our careers were, we went to see actors in plays, we would go to a preview, then we would go to an opening night, then you go out afterwards and you talk about it. So your relationship was really built on something, and those clients knew that you knew them.
Could you just give me a couple of hints? An actor wants to, you know what they want. They all want to come in and say, why aren't I working more, right? Whenever they want contact or they want to talk about their last job, the glories. How do you see somebody coming in to just really be 50%, we're in this together, and the actor that comes in and is groveling, or is going to scold you, or what's an appropriate way for an actor to come in and just say, this is a social visit, and I'm bringing you a gift, but it's not a bribe, or what's behavior that you say, because
Well, which, is it a social visit or is it a business visit?
And
Because
you
actors do
covered a
make
lot-
both.
is there, during the day, is there such a thing as a social visit? I mean, it's
Absolutely.
always
Well,
business.
I work in this building, so I get a lot of social visits. People come and they
Do you-
drop
do-
in
do you
because
like
they
it?
do what I say.
Do you like it?
Of course, I'm from New York. I want to see people's faces. It's one of the things I miss about our business is not seeing my clients the way I used to in New York.
Give us
But
some
you
clues.
covered a lot of ground in that question,
Yeah.
because one of the things that you said is that you come in and say, why aren't I working more? And that's not a discussion that anybody is going to invite, because what's imputed out of the question is that it's your fault
You're not
that
doing
I'm
your
not
job.
working more. And I think that there are a lot of actors that feel, I can tell you a story. When I started, I was a 22-year-old agent, and one of my young clients, who I was very friendly with, knew that I'd played baseball in my background, invited me to play on his softball team in the show business league. And it was all actors and me, and their team was called the Dog Pound. And they got jerseys, somebody sponsored them, and they got jerseys for everybody, and they gave everybody a dog name and a number for their jersey. And it's me and 10 actors. And they hand me my jersey at the first game, and my dog name is Scab, and my number is 0. And spending 10 weeks listening to these guys talk about their agents, it was like their agents were their mortal enemies. And I finally just, I didn't know that much about the business. I was new and young, and I said, you know, if you guys are talking about your agents like that, how do you think they're talking about you? And you kind of need them to get where you want to go. And it was an eye-opening thing for me because I was blessed to be raised in an atmosphere, an agency atmosphere, that was like the one that Marilyn describes, where it was a partnership, and you worked with the people that you, and if you found people, there were people that didn't get that or understand it, and those kind of clients sometimes would come and go. We've been blessed to keep the people that we've represented for a long time, almost all of them, and it's because you work together. You trust them. When they go into a room, they're going to represent you well. They trust you that you have their best interest at heart. And in a smaller agency like Marilyn and I have had, I think that's, and David, I think that's possible. At a bigger agency, I don't think it works that way because the priorities tend not to be arranged with the actor on top. The company comes first, and they need the actors to be successful for the company to be successful, but different choices are made based on what is going to benefit the company more than what's going to benefit the actor. And Bud can speak to that because he came from a big agency background. But
Yeah, but do you have any insight? How did the war between the actor and the agent start?
When I started out, and for those who have pen and paper, I wish you'd write down the name Martin Baum, B-A-U-M. I'm not quite sure whether there's really anybody here or just a few people that knew Marty. Marty was a New York agent, and he lived and died for his clients going back to probably to the late 50s, early 60s. And he wanted to come to Hollywood. He merged with a company called General Artists Corporation, which was like the old Morris Agency and MCA. It was a band booking agency that all of a sudden got into the motion picture business. And Marty said to me, I've got about 10, 15 actors that I would like to bring to Hollywood that are all unknowns, that I really believe have a chance in the business. And of those 10, 15 actors that nobody heard about was Marty Landau, Carol O'Connor, I'm just trying to think, Cliff Robertson, a young black actor by the name of Sidney Poitier, who just really was getting started. And I'll never forget one day I went into a casting meeting with Marty out here with Max Arno, who was one of the great casting directors at Columbia. And he was casting a movie with Alan Ladd, who was in those days a major star, who was about 5'6". And he needed an actor to play opposite him. And the way that Max described him, he was like a 5'7" or 5'8" blonde goddess, you know, like a Marlon Brando type. And I sat there and I watched Marty Baum all of a sudden start talking to Max Arno about this actor that he represented. And he went on and on and on, and he started to pitch Sidney Poitier. And Mac kept saying at the beginning, you know, it's not working. And by the time Marty got through, Max pressed the button and called upstairs, and he said, you know, Marty Baum's here, and he just suggested the greatest actor in the world, Sidney Poitier. And all of a sudden, Sidney Poitier got the lead opposite Alan Ladd, and Sidney was like 6'2", God love him, and they had to build like a little trench along Alan Ladd when they were walking down the street. So Sidney would walk in that little trench, and he would be at the same eye level as Alan Ladd. It was quite an interesting thing to see happen.
Wow, that's great. That's so. But what you're saying though is that you, I mean, can actors today establish that relationship that easy?
I think that actors today can, but I think that, first of all, one of the realities that hit me when I got into this business out here is that, you know, in New York we did art, and here it really is a business. And I feel really strongly that it's an actor's responsibility to know what's going on in the business. I believe the actors should read trades. I believe they should read the calendar section and the business section of the LA Times. If you want to, you can go on Deadline Hollywood, because that has all the up thing. But really is, I mean, I was reading the New York Times today, as a matter of fact, because I read the New York Times every day. That was from my New York breakdown. I mean, you know, we always do. But there was a whole article about the DVR and about ratings. There was another article about the man who was head of Time magazine who's retiring. I think it's really important that people, actors, be aware of it. You are in a profession here, and I think that you really have to work on your relationship with your agent. I think it's how you approach somebody. I think it's, you know, if you want to come in and you want to sit down with a couple of the agents and have a conversation about what's going on, that's great. But it's your responsibility to also be aware of what's going on in the business.
To add to that, I agree completely with Marilyn, and I've had a number of conversations this year about, you know, actors saying, is it slower than usual? And I continue to direct people to an article that was on the cover of the LA Times, the cover of the LA Times. You didn't have to dig, about how little new production dramas shot in LA this year that were ordered by the networks. Out of 28 new dramas, does anyone know how many shoot here that were ordered last year? 2. 2 out of 28 shoot in LA. I mean, yes, it's slower than usual in LA. Those are the kinds of things I think Marilyn is saying. Know what you're asking. It's helpful. I mean, yes, it's a partnership, so we share communication, but you have to know the facts about the business as it stands as well.
And a good way to approach it, instead of coming into your agent, excuse me, instead of coming into your agent and asking what they're doing for you and what they could do differently so that you'd be happier, approach it from the standpoint of what they think you could be doing, because there may be things that you're not doing. One of the things that I find actors fall into the trap of, especially actors who've been successful and worked, and then they're in a period where they're not working, they're not doing anything to be an actor. They're not watching movies, they're not going to theater, they're not going to class, they're not doing anything to work at being an actor. They're sitting at home waiting for the phone to ring so that they'll have the opportunity to go audition for something to get a job. And I think there's, especially for people that aren't well established, it's your responsibility to, it's a profession. And it's, we all work at our professions for, you know, 2/3 of the time that we're awake every day. And you guys need to do that also. It's a responsibility that's incumbent on you, because if you're not doing it, you're going to go read against somebody who is doing it. And those are the people that, you know, it's going to show. People are going to notice. They're going to see that more time, more effort, more passion was put into what somebody else might be doing. And if you get left behind that way, it's easy to blame your agent, but I don't think your agent's really going to be able to help you.
When I first moved out here, did I interrupt you?
No,
Yes, I did.
please.
When I first moved out here, I was working with the J. Michael Bloom Agency, and it was before the internet, and so it was right around when pilot season was going on. And my assistants would stay, and they would Xerox the scripts, and they would leave them outside. And, you know, there'd be a whole pile of scripts left. They would stay till 9, 10 o'clock at night. We worked very hard to get the actors the auditions. And every day I would come in and I would look, and there were certain people
Who didn't pick it up.
never picked up the scripts, right? And I started to lose interest in them. And I knew that in a certain period of time, I would not be representing them anymore. And most of them aren't in the business anymore, because I felt like everybody did their job except for them. They were too lazy to come and pick up the script and prepare for the audition.
It's a good question, then. Not your clients, of course. I'm not speaking of your clients. I'm talking about other actors you've heard about. But what would you say? What would you say? Do actors earn their reputation that they're lazy? Other clients, of course, not yours. But do they earn it? Is it the small percentage? Is it half and half? Or over your collective wisdom? I mean, is that a well-earned stereotype that actors are lazy?
I don't think that's totally true on any level whatsoever.
Me neither.
think
I would
it's
say it's a very
any-
small percentage.
Right, and I think it's like any other profession. There are people who really care about what they do and work very hard and are very committed, and then there are people who are not. There are people who want to be actors, and there are people who want to be stars. And I think there's a little bit of what's happened here, because I have friends who teach acting. Matter of fact, somebody I went to high school with is an acting teacher, and he'll have people who come out here from Kansas. No offense to anybody who's from Kansas. I just use that.
Middle America.
From Middle America, okay. And, you know, and they call him and they say, well, you know, I'd like to take some classes with you. And and he'll say, well, it'll be like 6 months or a year or whatever it is. And they say, well, can't I come in and just take a class? I mean, can't I take 2 classes and then I can become a star? First of all, the reality of it is that I believe that talent is a gift that you have, but I believe that working on your craft really helps you be in control of what you do when you go in for auditions. It helps you prepare for auditions. It helps you to be able to read a script, and it helps you doing a better job. But I don't find the people that I don't really find that's true. I don't find actors lazy at all.
Do you appreciate actors that are self-starters, that come to you and say, I'm doing this play, I did this video, my friends and I are shooting on the weekend, or do you say, look, don't encumber yourself, I need you free. I need you free to...
Totally not.
Absolutely not.
Totally, and I have said to actors, I don't want anybody who sits and waits for the phone to ring, and one day you wake up and you're 50 years old and you think, whatever happened to my life? I believe you need to have a life. I believe people need to take vacations. I believe they need to have families. I believe that it makes you a better person. I always said to people, I could have been interviewing the most important person that I could ever interview in my whole career, and if my husband called me and he needed me, then I would get up and walk out of that meeting and go to my husband. And if that person didn't understand, then it wasn't somebody I wanted in my life.
Testify.
Testify! I didn't know we were getting religious. That was dynamite. Did you want to say something, bud?
I do.
I'd like to put this on the table to open it up to my fellow agents here on my left. One thing that has always been for the independent agents or the agents that had the boutiques, such as mine, is the fact that when an actor is going out for a part or calls about a part that he heard from, the competition that we all are confronted with at the Morris office, the CAAs, the ICMs, there are people at each network, like Peter Golden, for an example, at CBS. When a breakdown comes out and they're casting CSI, for an example, I've always tried to explain to my actors that there is a list that casting director has before the breakdown comes out of maybe 5 or 10 actors that are approved by the network.
If they're lucky, it's only 5
Pardon me?
If they're lucky, it's
If they're
only
like,
5 or 10.
and the casting people's job is one thing and one thing only, and that is to put another list together to bring in, and today it used to be 5, 10 actors, now it's 50 to 100 actors for the same part. And each actor that gets a call back to go to producers, that name then goes upstairs to the Peter Goldens or the people at NBC or ABC or the CWs. And it's the competition, and all of a sudden, 9 times out of 10, the guys at the Morris office, the guys at CAA, have that name actor who one day kept saying, I don't want to do television, who are now desperately looking to do that movie of the week and that television. So the working actor that I represent, or that maybe Mr. Kelly represents, we're always confronted with losing out at the last minute to a so-called name actor that the network will approve over the young actors that we're trying to get in for the part. I don't know whether you have anything to say about that, John, or whether your feelings are the same.
Well, I think that happens. I don't think you can, there's not really anything you can do to protect against it, because it's not something that is part of your process. If I have an actor that I represent and I get them an opportunity to go audition, they should do that. They shouldn't say, well, I'm not going to audition for that because you're going to offer it to someone from CAA who's unemployed. So it doesn't really factor into what I'm doing, but it happens.
Yeah.
And people can give terrific auditions. One of the things that as an actor you'll learn as you go along is that the best actor doesn't always get the part. You could turn on the television any night of the week and you can see that.
Wait, that sounds like skepticism. What? Really? You've turned on and not seen the most brilliant actor in the part? It's a numbers game.
Yeah, and there are a lot of different things that go into it, and some of them you have some control over, and what you need to do is, I think, gather as many of those different factors that you do have some control over, and exercise your talent toward them. There are going to be things that are going to happen that aren't going to be your fault, and some will be. But the more prepared you are, like Marilyn said, so that when you go there, you have the best opportunity to do what, to read it the way you read it in the car on the way there. You have the best opportunity in the room to do that. And sometimes you're going to make choices that people are not going to understand, or they're not going to get, or they're not going to appreciate or care for. It's your job as an actor, I think, not to try to guess at what they're looking for. Take the information that you have, read the script whenever you can read the script, because you can glean lots of different things from it. Create a backstory for your actor so you know what they're doing, why they're doing it. It'll color the way you make your choices, and then go and try to do something that they're going to remember. Because if they're going to see 30 people for a part, somebody's going to stand out, and 26 people are not going to stand out. So if there's something that you can do to do that, it sounds risky. It's not the safe way to do it, but I don't have anybody these days that gets so many auditions that they can afford not to do that, because it's just harder. People used to go out, twice a day during pilot season, and now those people might go out, 3 times a month. So it's a different business. So there's no reason not to try to put your imprint on what you do. Why you got to give somebody a reason to hire you instead of one of those other people that are on that list.
But I think that one of the things that have changed is that because of the shrinkage of the movie business, many more people who would not do guest roles on television are doing them. And guest roles used to be a way of entree into the business for actors, and that's getting harder and harder because, as I said, if you look at television now, I mean, when I first got into the business many years ago when I was at APA in New York, I mean, APA out here had their movie list and their TV list, and they would never cross. And if we ever called them, I remember we represented, may he rest in peace, Jack Warden, and if we called California about Jack Warden for a TV show at that time, oh no, he's not a TV actor. But now, if you look at all of the people like the Laura Lenny's of the world and the Bill Macy's and all of the people who used to do film, that whole business for them has dried up, and so the only way they can make any kind of money is by doing television, and so it's become harder for the newer actors starting out.
Okay, I have a question then on that. As agents that go to bat and fight for their clients and go in and lobby and say, I've got the perfect guy, but then you're faced with Pat saying, your guy's not on my list, nothing I can do. A, how do you handle that? And B, have you ever had clients say to you, I know you went to bat for me, I know you tried, thanks for the effort on this one, on this particular project. You know I wanted that NC, I called you about it. Do you get that feedback? And how do you deal with the rejection of, I worked all day on this and he just said no?
You know what, I have had actors thank me, and I believe that, the communication that you have with your clients and that they know that you've really done everything you can is the most positive thing. It's frustrating. It's what I myself personally have learned to not like about a business that I've liked. When people ask me to pitch somebody by email, I don't know what that means. My pitching somebody is about what I feel about them emotionally, and I want to sell them to somebody, and the casting directors really are not that interested in hearing what you have to say when they want you to email that. So, you do your job to the best of your abilities, and you can't make yourself, it's like when an actor goes into audition, and I've always said this to actors, if you've done what you wanted to do, the audition is successful. And I think the same thing about myself. If I've negotiated a deal and I've accomplished what I think is fair and I wanted to do, I can't make myself crazy. That's the way it is.
Great. Okay. I have, these are just some of my questions now. If we go right down the line, what is the best feedback an agent can hear about a new client or somebody, maybe somebody that's not known to you for 100 years, but a new client goes in, casting, calls back, this is the feedback. What's the best thing you can hear? What's the thing you want to hear from them? Even if it didn't go great, they're not going to get the job, but you want to hear this thing so you have belief in your client.
They went in and they were prepared. and they said the actor knew what he wanted to do, and he got it across in one reading. All of a sudden, they'll say, well, here's a little twist, try it this way. And the actor might fall apart because they'd spent so much time getting it in, thinking that that was the way that they wanted. I used to represent, I guess probably my favorite client, or one of my busiest clients over the years, was Tom Bosley, and I'm sure most of you remember Tom from Mr. Cunningham for Happy Days. He was on that for 11 years, and then he went into Murder, She Wrote with Angela Lansbury, and from that I put him into a series called Father Dowling for NBC. His biggest frustrations when he would go out for a movie was, and when he didn't get the job, his frustrations were such where, you know, I'm such a major television star, how can I lose out to Paul Newman, or how could I lose out to Marlon Brando, you know, or other names I'm just kind of groping in the air. I'm supposed to be such a major television star, and his frustrations, and they were valid, that so-and-so got the part and he didn't. And it was hard to kind of explain to him that that's the nature of the beast.
The feedback that you want from you want to hear?
Yeah, you just want to know that they did well, that they acquitted themselves well. I can tell you what the worst feedback is.
I was going to do that next, but go ahead.
Well,
Go ahead.
Well, when somebody, it happens where people go and give auditions. If they're bad because they don't have the talent or the skill, or it's not developed, then a casting director will be pretty honest with you about that. My experience is, if they're bad because they're unprepared, it's really hard to get a second chance with a casting director for that. And a casting director knows an actor's work because they've been in before, or because she or he has seen them on television or in the movies, and they come in and do a bad audition because they're unprepared, then that's an unforgivable thing, and that's something that's very, very hard to overcome.
They remember good work as well as bad work.
They remember bad auditions longer than they remember good auditions.
That's good. Marilyn, the best feedback?
I would say if somebody called me and said, your client is really special, they just weren't right for this part, that would be a positive thing for me.
That's what you want to hear, David?
That's basically what I was going to say is
Yeah.
when they call and say, you were right, that person is that good, whether they get this job or not, you were 100% correct to make me see them. That is...
And they represent you as they go in. I mean, that's your
Absolutely.
reputation on the line.
Absolutely.
Actors have to know that. So what's the worst thing you've heard? And feel free to name names. No, I'm kidding. Don't name names. What's the thing that you hear and it's a red flag? You immediately want to call that person and say, you can't do that ever again. That's crossing the line, or you made a big mistake, or you can't work together.
Well, I think we've kind of touched on it already. Being ill-prepared or
That's it.
unprepared is really a bad thing. However...
Drunk.
Drunk is not so good. Well, once in a while. But I think the other thing might be sometimes because of the circumstances, people are kept waiting and they have other appointments, and actors act up and throw attitude or diva, whatever you want to call it. And that can be damaging. And if you're in an appointment and you have to leave and you aren't seen, then just gracefully excuse yourself and don't make a scene, because people remember that stuff. You know?
I put it, getting in the room isn't impossible. Your goal shouldn't be to get in the room. Your goal should be to get back in the room.
Good answer.
Oh, thanks. It's in my book titled, okay.
I think as an agent who's represented plenty of young people fresh out of college over the years, the most important ratio is not your booking ratio the first year, it's your callback ratio.
Callbacks lead to jobs.
That's correct. And if you had 70 appointments and 1 callback, there's a problem. If you had 70 appointments and 35 callbacks and still didn't book a job, you're going to be fine.
Now, let me do that for a second, because we're all skeptics. Are you charting that? Are you looking on a spreadsheet and saying 70 callbacks, no job, 70 auditions, no callbacks? Are you saying, ooh, it's time to thin the herd? Honestly, are you going to admit to that? I mean,
To be perfectly honest with you,
Please.
when an actor, say, does want to come in and have, you were earlier asking about how do you react, one of the first things that my office does is we do have records of every audition, every callback, every job booked, obviously. And one of the first things we do is print up the appointment sheets and see. Let's see who they've met. Let's see who called them back, who didn't, what it was, what it wasn't. When people come in and say, I want to do more movies, and they audition for 30 movies, which that's not possible these days, but and didn't get any of them, it's like, but I want to be in the ones you didn't send me on. It's like,
Let's
Not
start
so
with the
much.
ones
Not
you
so
got in
much.
the room, I see.
yeah.
I don't do that. Do you, John, over at your office? I don't think I've ever done that. I mean, I haven't had, at one given time, right now, in my management, I think I only have maybe 10 or 12 actors, and then I've got some writers and some people that are interested.
Do you need some more? Do you need some more actors? I'm kidding. Go on. Go on.
So I don't think I've ever really sat down, even when I was at General Artists Corporation, those days when we were still faxing things back and forth, we never kept score, we never added it up. God knows today, I've got a lot of actors who are very talented people, go out, interview after interview, and then keep losing out to a bigger name, or they went taller or darker, whatever it is. I move on, I don't sit there and make a little list.
Well, it's harder to get a callback now, too, because they put everybody on tape.
That's true. There's
So
callbacks
you
are
don't know
harder
how
these
many,
days.
you know,
That's right.
what the
How many
chain of
get sent
command
on to
is and how
producers
many-
and how many don't.
Right,
Yeah,
the
but
tape
I-
is now the callback, really, yeah.
Yeah, but I think what David was saying was that, when we submit electronically and send out appointments electronically, we have the ability to look at the amount of appointments an actor has gone on, and then ultimately to know how many things that they've booked. It's not a negative thing. It doesn't mean that he's dropping the client, but if the client comes up and is complaining that he hasn't had enough activity, it's just a way of saying, hey, look, you did have all of these, auditions, which just is a reality check. I mean, that's really what it was. Because I never as an agent added up what my agents brought in. Because in
Me
my
neither.
mind, if my agents were signing new clients and getting their clients auditions, they were doing their job. They didn't really have any control over whether somebody booked a job or not. And we all worked together. We all represented all of the clients of the agency. And I felt that if we did well, everybody should share in the, bounty.
Well done. Can you give me, write down the line again, please, if you have them, one or two best habits actors can have and one or two worst habits actors can have as far as their agent is concerned?
That's a hard one for me to try and answer, because it's my hopes as an agent, and even as a manager, I still believe I'm functioning as an agent, that when I give an actor the sides or get them a script when they prepare to go in for a reading, I feel that they're going to do the best job that they possibly can. And if the actors always say, geez, I lost that part. And I always just say, well, you never really had the part, so how could you really say you lost it? And it's just something today that it's so difficult to try and answer one way or the other. I mean, it's just a tough question for me to answer.
Okay. Oh, just,
I think
You
one
have
of the
helpful hints.
difficult things is when, and this hasn't happened in a long time, but when I came from a bigger company when I first started, and it used to happen fairly often where somebody would come into the office straight from having seen a movie and say, I would have been perfect for the part of Catherine, how come I didn't go up for that? And it's a hugely frustrating thing. It sort of manifests itself differently now, I think, because a great proportion of actors have access to the breakdowns now. So actors are, they're calling, I think, more and more and say, I saw the part of, which is fine. We indulge that for a little while. Once you explain to the actors how to use the breakdowns, as opposed to, because there's a sort of an art to it. It isn't just, oh, they're casting this part and I'm perfect for it. So, in episodic television, most of the lead parts that you see in breakdowns never result in appointments, because the lists that Bud was talking about are what they're cast off of. Or a guy that might have come in and read for another pilot and didn't get it that they knew, and so they brought, there are a lot of different tricks and arts to deciphering the breakdowns. And that's the manifestation of that, how come I didn't go up for, that we see now. It's easier because when it happens with a breakdown, often the part's not cast yet when somebody's talking about it, as opposed to coming home from seeing it in a movie. But there's often, if it's not done in a teamwork way, it's probably not going to be welcomed by your agent.
So my next question is, if actors, like you said, Bud, they're diverse, everyone has to grow all their skills. They've got to be really good business people and marketing people and understand social networking, right, as well as work on their craft and maybe voiceover and dance if they want and sing so they can get on a competition show and sing their way into. So if you had to, actor comes to you, I only have so much money for one class, one area of study, what would you say? Is there money best spent on growing what skill in today's market? Please.
It depends on what they want to do. Do they want to be a television actor, a film actor, a stage actor?
You're my agent. You tell me. I want to be an actor.
But if you're only going to invest in one thing, I mean,
Yeah.
to invest in like a vocal coach, if what you really want to be is do musicals, you should get a vocal coach. You know, if what you really want to do is be on a sitcom.
I'm talking about television and film mostly. I wasn't really talking about Broadway, but I'm just saying here in the television and film world.
If you really, like for instance, if you really want to be on a sitcom, you should study comedy. You should go to UCB or the Groundlings or one of
Improv.
the good comedy schools.
Improv, yeah.
Improv schools and study comedy. Don't just say, well, my friends say I'm funny. That doesn't make a good, funny actor.
Because people don't write funny scripts anymore. I mean, the days of Frasier and a well-crafted comedy are gone. They write stupid stuff, and they depend on you to come in and make it funny.
Fill in the blanks.
So the improv skills are much more important in comedy than I think they used to be.
Anything other than improv, would you say? Where would you tell your client to put his
That's
money?
specifically like if you want comedy.
Okay. Any other suggestions? Go right ahead.
You know, I have to say something. What really is frustrating, and I hope you guys agree with me, today, and I'm not singling out any specific agents, but today there are so many, quote, showcases, if you will, and I'm sure you're both going to nod and say, I know what you're going to get to, Bud, is agent friends of mine have a list of 10 casting directors that are doing a showcase, and you pay your $25 to $35 to $50 and go in because all of a sudden you get a chance to read for a Mary Jo Slater or whoever, Mark Hirschfeld or somebody going down the list.
Or the person that parks their car.
Pardon me? Right, or the assistant to
person makes the
so-and-so.
copies, yeah, right.
And you think you go in, you think you did a great job, and you kind of hope that that casting director is going to put you on a list like the guys over at Aldrich Dawson Kritzer. You might get one actor that'll get a call to go in, and they have seen maybe 50 to 75 actors. And the frustrations that the actors then keep building up, and they then say, well, let's go and try this casting director, or let's try this casting director. And all of a sudden, you've gone to 10 or 12 casting directors over a 6-month period and spent hundreds of dollars, and the bottom line is you came away without maybe one interview, let alone one job. And it's also something that we live with that's very frustrating. You can't say to your actor, well, I don't think you should spend that money because I don't think that casting director is going to bring you in for a television show or a movie that they're casting. At least that's been my experience.
I will say a couple of casting director friends that I do know do go to some of those showcases to find very small parts that agents are not willing to work on because one-line parts, you know, very small things that a lot of agencies just don't have the time and manpower to concentrate on chasing down. And if they work on a show that does have a lot of bit parts, they will sometimes go to those.
That's happened to me.
But if you're there looking for the guest lead on NCIS or
Yeah,
whatever,
forget it.
probably not going to happen at a showcase. So save your $25.
Can you give me some good habits actors should have toward their agents? Are there sentences?
Gifts.
Gifts.
Money.
Gifts, money. How about food, hot pizza, anything? Just maybe ways you like to be talked to or sentences they can use to communicate better. Is there anything that...
Respect.
Respect?
I mean, you know, I treat people with respect, and that's all I want is people to treat me with respect. As I said before, I think, you know, we work together, and an actor always has, you know, the right to ask whatever he wants to ask. It's just the way that you do it and how you handle it. And I'm aware, you know, one of the things I learned, and I always taught all my assistants, the bottom line is, on a day-to-day basis, most of what happens has nothing to do with me. It has to do with everybody else's frustration. And people call and they're upset about something and they may raise their voice to the assistant. But, you know, it's a very hard business. And it's really, people have to learn how to deal with other people. And as I said, if people treat me with respect, I treat them with respect. And that's the most important thing to me.
I think it's fair to say that to know that the people you represent treat you as a human being, like Marilyn says. Today, my office got a letter from a long-term client who's, you know, been for about a year taking care of her very ill mother out of state, blah, blah, blah. And it was a love letter to the agency about being supportive and understanding and getting it. And she went on to brag how she tells her friends how much she loves her agent, and people look at her like she has 3 heads. You know, that's the kind of people I want to be in business with. That's the perfect client.
Unfortunately, Tom Bosley would always go around with a little chip on his shoulder saying, my agent Bud Moss is always pissed off at me because I'm taking 90% of his salary.
Yeah. That's a good one. So when actors ask me, you know, how do I get an agent? I always say to them, you know, if you just go do what actors do, agents know you want them to represent, right? You want them to represent you. Is that? Can I say, is that fair when actors come to you? There's a feeling you get, and you know that the equation is, if I'm an actor, I'm probably looking for representation if I talk to you in a certain way, or you can get a sense of, I have representation, I'm just meeting you as a fellow actor. Is that something you have to say out loud to you? I'm really looking for representation, or do you get a feeling, can you get a sense from them?
Are you talking about meeting them socially or in the office?
Yes,
What's
no,
the
no,
context?
socially, yes, I'm
Oh,
saying
you mean you
socially,
bump
you're at
into
a mixer, you're at a screening, and...
I do not assume that every actor I meet wants me to represent them. I absolutely do not assume
So
that.
they have to ask. They would have to ask and say...
Of course.
So-
Or I may ask them.
Right.
It's a
Might come right out and
two-way
say it.
street.
Come right and say, and that's an okay approach, to just simply ask. That's never taken as offense, and that's a very easy thing to do.
Yeah, or I think you can, you know, write a note to somebody that you met at a party and say, I met you the other day and I just wanted to know that, I wanted you to know that, you know, if you would represent, you know, however you make the approach. If you don't want to have an awkward, you know, over the cheese dip about, I'd really like you to be my agent, and to get turned down at the party, that might not be the best thing, but I think that if that's a desire that you have, that you should make it known, because I don't operate
Yeah,
under
no,
that
I
assumption.
agree.
I think a really
agree.
classy way is to say, do you have a card? If you really want to pursue someone who may not be pursuing you, do you have a card? And when the event is done and you've gone home, and you can write your email or letter or whatever, and let them know, I'd be interested in sitting down and talking with you. That's instead of cornering them over the cheese dip.
Maybe a bit confrontational over the cheese dip.
I think it's everyone on this panel's worst nightmare to go to a party and to get cornered by someone when you're there, even if it's a business party, but you're there for social reasons, and it becomes about them and their career, and not about the fact that you're there at a Christmas party or whatever the case.
So you're saying no
funeral.
That's right.
on the no on the portable DVD player? Watch my reel.
Yeah.
You don't think?
On my phone. You don't need a DVD
I
player.
did this number, right? They just start singing. Okay, I'm going to go to questions from
I
the
think
audience.
I would like to
Oh,
just
go ahead, Bud.
I'd like to add one thing, because today in our industry, I don't think that I've gone to any so-called parties where I would meet a young actor today that I all of a sudden would feel in my 5 or 10 minute conversation with them that, and I'm sure you've all discovered actors, I'm sure you've all got clients over the years that have gone on to be major stars or important actors. One time I was at a cocktail party that an actress director friend of mine was giving, and I saw this little girl in the corner sitting over there in blue jeans and a sweatshirt and tennis shoes, with these big blue eyes peering out at me. And I'm sitting down, I'm having a drink, and she said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Bud Moss." She says, "What do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I'm a famous Hollywood agent." Kidding. She said, "You know, I've never met a Hollywood agent yet." And I said, "Well, what are you doing here?" And she said, "Well, I was brought out from Chicago. I was doing a play at the Goodman Theater called Caesar and Cleopatra, or Antony and Cleopatra. And this producer came to me and said, we're testing some people in Hollywood for a film called Sterile Cuckoo, and we want to fly you out here." And the director out here was Alan Pakula. And this little girl was her first time in front of a camera, and she tested, and Alan Pakula said to her, "We're trying to get Liza Minnelli, but if we don't, you have a very good shot at the part." I don't know what, you know the story. And she didn't get the part. She went back to Chicago, and her name was Carrie Snodgrass. For anybody that knows Carrie, you can raise your hand. I think maybe there's 5 or 10 people here. She came back out to Hollywood, determined that she was going to be an actress, and I promised her mother that I would represent her. And through a series of events, in those days you could take your clients by the hand out to the studios, meet casting directors. There was a brilliant casting lady by the name of Ethel Wynett who was over at CBS, and another brilliant casting lady by the name of Monique James at Universal. And we took Carrie around, and all of a sudden Monique said, "I want to put her under contract." And over a period of time, she did every episodic show at Universal to a point where they started testing her for movies. And along came a film called Diary of a Mad Housewife. And she tested with maybe 10 other actresses, and lo and behold, Carrie got the lead opposite Richard Benjamin and Frank Langella in this brilliant film. And lo and behold, she got nominated for an Oscar for literally her first movie. Now, the tragedy of this that happened to this young girl, whose career was just at the pinnacle of success, she found herself moving in with a rock and roller who should be nameless, and she got into the proverbial drinking problem and the drug problems. The night of the Oscar, when she was supposed to fly into town, she got a call, Monique James got a call that Carrie had OD'd, that she was going to make it, but she had OD'd in a hospital in Northern California. And for her first major film, she never made it to the Oscars. And from then on, her career started to go into a tailspin. And over a period of years, after maybe another 10 movies, she had liver cancer. And they tried to get a replacement for her. And tragically, she died. And I don't think she was 40 years old at the time. So I tell you the story only because we've all experienced hoping to find the next Sally Kellerman, who I got into the movie MASH, or Diane Cannon, who I put into Bob Carroll, Ted and Alice. Both of them got Oscar nominations, but yet their careers, they were either successful in television and they wanted to make it in movies, or the other way, it went the other way. So having told that story, I think it's something that we all, as agents, we deal with people's lives, and we have to be very protective of, and we try and do the best that we can. John?
You know what? I'd love you to dispel or reinforce that myth that talent agents can just see, smell, feel talent. Can you
did
meet
that with
somebody?
Carrie. I did that with
You
Carrie.
do that with Carrie. Can you do it? Can you meet somebody in 5 or 10 minutes and say, yeah,
I have to see their work.
You have to see their work?
I have to see their work. I've never represented anybody. And here it's harder for me because all the actors that I represented from New York, I would see in the theater. Here you look at a DVD, and with new people starting out, they have to come in and do monologues. Because I have to have a sense of who they are. It's
Okay.
very generic for me.
David?
I agree 100% with
You got to
Marilyn.
see their work.
100%.
You're not going to make any, you can't just say, I'm a star maker. It doesn't exist.
I am not a star maker.
Oh, well, I'm a star seer. Okay.
No, no.
John-
How about you or your partner,
John-
Sandy? Can
No,
Sandy do it?
no, he's worse at it than I am. No, there was an agent that I knew in New York when I first became an agent named Gary Leverton, and he had a lot of problems, but one of the things he had was an incredible gift for being able to see somebody at another table at Sardi's having cocktails before the theater and going and finding that person and talking them into being an actor and going out, and he had it. And I think a lot of people in our business, especially a lot of people in the casting business, claim to have it. I think probably a lot of agents and managers do too, but I don't. I think it's a very, very rare thing, and I think many fewer people are able to do that
Today than before.
Well, no, I think fewer people can actually do it than think they can do it.
I agree with that.
Good answer.
All right, I'm
I
just,
think part of what leads to that is in California in general, there's, I say it's kind of the Las Vegas factor. You know, in New York, the cream tends to rise to the top, and in LA, it's kind of all shaken up together. And we hear these crazy stories about people stepping off the bus, they pull the lever, they get 3 red 7s, and they're a gazillionaire, and on a hit series or a movie star or whatever. And people think, oh, it's that, I'll just go be discovered. And I wish those stories were never written, because
but do you know any of those that are true? I got off the bus and they put me on a series. Do you have any clients that showed up and was here a week and got on a series?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah, it happens.
It happens. But I think, oh, sorry, go ahead,
No,
please.
one of the most frustrating things, though, is when you meet young actors who come here. Some of them have been to school and have some training. Some of them just have the ambition to be famous. And they think that it's that easy, because I always used to tell people...
Because of those crazy stories?
Well, in New York, if you were a good actor, you were on stage. And if you were not a good actor, you were a waiter. In Los Angeles, they used to say if you were a good actor, you were in the movies, and if you were a bad actor, we put you on television. So we advertised our bad actors, and in New York, they didn't. So it was I don't think it's really like that anymore, but, or maybe it is. I don't know. Not as much.
So I'd just like to play a quick game, if you will indulge. This is called the word association game. I'm just going to throw out a word, and if you would, please give me the first thing that comes to your mind right down the line. It's good fun. Trust me, it's good fun. Are you ready?
Lordy.
We'll go this direction.
Good.
And everybody, one answer for every topic. Okay, Marlon Brando.
Streetcar, Name Desire, and I got to tell you a quick story of Marlon Brando.
Oh, okay.
Can I do
I'm
that?
glad you can't.
I have my word ready to go, but...
It's not the... Okay, Streetcar Named Desire.
I almost ran over Marlon Brando one time with my car.
2 stories, okay.
Incredibly sexy.
Incredibly sexy.
I think maybe the best.
The best. Clearly, you haven't seen my reel. Come on, he was the best. I mean, he was no Montgomery Clift, but he was close. All right. I'll do your story in a second, but are you ready? Movies that depict talent agents.
What makes Sammy run?
What does it make you think? Anything?
No. My favorite year.
Broadway Danny Rose.
Broadway Danny Rose?
What was yours?
Broadway Danny Rose. What do you have?
Entourage, but it's a TV
Entourage, that's okay.
TV show.
That's okay. Star Wars.
A big screw up by the producer that was trying to put the film together. Universal turned down the Star Wars, and Alan Ladd Jr., I think, wasn't it, that picked it up over at Fox and made the film over there? Can you imagine
How is that on your resume?
an
I
executive
turned
at
down
Universal?
Star
Can you imagine executive Universal saying, you know, who wants to see something? He turns it down, a major executive, like next to Lou Wasserman. And he had to live the rest of his life knowing that he had turned down this film, and Fox went on to have it one of their major motion pictures
Well, it's
forever.
Star Wars.
I think it was the beginning of the end of a good era of filmmaking because of the blockbuster element of it.
Ah, okay. Marilyn?
George Lucas is a very rich man today.
Georgia? David?
Rich man today.
What's with that hair on her?
What's with that hair on her?
What's with her hair?
The French rolls, yeah. Okay. Kim Kardashian. Sir, no comment.
No.
Ma'am.
Odom, right? Is that one of the Kardashians?
Married to, oh yeah, no, that's the sister with the hair.
Chloe.
Yeah.
Kind of represents to me the low end of where our business has gone.
Low end of the business.
Touche.
Beginning of the end.
Beginning of the end? Okay. Athletes that want to act.
I beg your pardon?
Athletes that decide to become actors.
Well, I represented a lot of them. Can I tell you about a movie that I put together? Let's take Joe Theismann for an example. How many
Okay.
people know Joe Theismann? He had a marvelous short-lived career in Hollywood, but he got to co-star in about maybe 10 TV shows that I put him into. It's just something that
Personality's personality.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, athletes always want to be actors, and actors always want to be athletes.
right.
Marilyn?
I don't really know any athletes, but if they could do it, then that's fine.
Okay. David?
I kind of agree. I don't know athletes.
Never represented one?
I quote the line from Greece, don't be, if you can't be an athlete, be an athletic supporter.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
That's good.
That's a good
Okay. YouTube.
one.
YouTube.
I got to pass on that one.
YouTube pass?
I don't know. Fun videos.
Fun videos?
You know what, I think it's a new way of the business that could have some potential for people.
Can you sell an actor on YouTube?
People are discovered on YouTube.
People are discovered on YouTube?
I think it's like you can see anything on YouTube, pretty
Right.
much, which is
Right.
great and not so great. you
Yeah.
know?
The studio system,
We'll never see it again.
Gone.
sir.
Extinct. It's
Extinct?
Does no longer exist.
Yeah.
And never will.
Gone.
Was it any good?
Definitely.
Was it?
Definitely.
Okay. Barbara Streisand.
Marilyn Monroe.
I don't know.
Do you know who she is, Barbara Streisand?
I know who she is. I don't have any Barbara Streisand.
Do you have a? Oh no! Just first thing comes to mind.
I saw her at the Blue Angel in New York when she was starting out her career. She was
for you.
incredible.
Sir.
I'm gay.
I'm gay.
Nice. All right. James Dean.
James Dean, Dick Davalos,
I met Dick Davalos. Wow.
giant, truly what I think one of the great young actors that we lost at a very early age. How many, can we get a raise of hand on James Dean?
Everyone knows.
Good.
Everybody knows
Good.
James Dean. Yeah. Sir. James
I
Dean.
think, often copied, never,
Right.
always short.
I agree with Bud, one of the great actors that we lost at an early age.
Sir.
The first word is tragic. I mean, that was tragic. I think a better question, though, is not who knows James Dean, who knows James Dean's work.
Right. Yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah.
I've actually seen absolutely everything he's ever done, from the Coke commercial to, but that's because we have great museums. Electronic submissions.
It's our life today. I mean, there's no way of getting to your casting people or your producers any other way. It's got it done by email.
Sir.
It's impersonal.
In person. Marilyn.
I don't mind the process because I never did them myself. My assistants always did them anyway. But
She's
it's
so
just
fancy.
But what I find difficult is just the fact that the casting directors don't want to get on the phone and have a conversation afterwards, after you submit.
Sir.
It's a necessary evil.
Necessary evil. John Huston.
Whoa. Treasure of Sierra Madre.
Nice.
Angelica Houston.
Angelica,
It's a little
I
closer to
would say
mine.
Treasure of Sierra Madre, sorry.
I would say great director, Angelica Houston.
Also brilliant in Chinatown. Yes.
Brilliant in Chinatown. Okay. Truman Capote.
Really one of the great writers of the, 50s, correct me if I'm wrong. Legendary.
Sir.
In Cold Blood.
Ooh, good for you.
Marilyn.
We used to see him at Sardi's in New York all the time.
Sir.
Well, for me, I represent Robert Morse. So when you say Truman Capote, Robert Morse won a Tony for a play called True
That's right.
that I remember going to see. I wasn't Robert's agent at the time. I didn't work for the company then, but I remember thinking I was going to go and just see the first act because I should, and I didn't leave my seat at intermission.
Lucille Ball.
The best, the funniest ever.
I agree.
Sir.
Same.
Definite. Great star.
Definite.
Changed the face of half-hour comedy.
The Deer Hunter.
The Deer Hunter. That's a tough one. It was a great, I'm trying to put the little pieces together. Just a memorable film, and I can't remember the people that were tied into it. How about that one?
The stars?
Meryl
It's,
Streep, Robert De
Robert De
Niro.
Niro.
Thank you.
John
Go ahead.
Savage.
Yeah.
Chris Walken.
Yeah.
Johnny Voight.
Michael Cimino was...
Michael Cimino directed it.
Yeah,
Meryl Streep, yep.
gave him
and
the
John
opportunity to
Cazale,
do
right?
Heaven's Gate. Right?
Heaven's Gate.
He got-
Okay,
thanks
Deer
to-
Hunter?
Yeah,
Michael Cimino?
Yeah, that gave him...
Deer Hunter?
Yeah, I thought it was an incredible movie, and I'm sorry that from it, the career didn't continue.
Michael Cimino. For me, it's the best movie I ever saw at a drive-in. Truth.
Great.
I saw it at a drive-in.
Great, great. Okay, so questions from our audience. I don't know if I should read the person's name. Do I read the person's name? No, not their name. And you know what? If it's a bad question, I'll point them out, just so you know. So this person says they think they've done everything they can. They're always prepared. They get great feedback. They go to the workshops. They have new headshots. Their reel is up to date. But what else do you think they can do? What can they do to move on with their agent manager and that will to move to an agent or manager that will have the power to get them into more or better rooms? Because they're just sort of stuck with keep hearing it's slow, but they're a good client, they're up to date. What do you think helps them move to a next better?
If they've done the showcase, if they've got new pictures, if they've got demo reels, I mean, everything is so important, and the rest of it is just being at the right place at the right time and getting a shot at it. If they don't get a shot at it, it's back to the drawing board again.
Well, and you may have the wrong agent, and if that's the case, then there may be some things that you can do to try to get a different agent, for you, a better agent.
Are you
Yeah,
talking
I-
a bigger agent, a more powerful agent?
I think that's the
going to-
question.
No, I think,
What
no, I
things
don't,
do you
I don't
think
think
she
you
could
need
do?
a powerful agent to be successful in the business. You need an agent that gets you, that's passionate, and that knows what they're doing. And I think, find your way into an equity waiver show, or do actor things to try to get the attention of people that can help you and who will understand what it is that you have to offer and appreciate it in a way that they can help you apply what you do.
That's a good question, because now somebody comes to you and says, look, I've got plenty of credits, and I'm quite competent, and I get good feedback. I just don't get into rooms I feel are, of higher quality. Do you smell something good or bad in that? If someone says to you, I'll bring you everything on a platter, I want you to represent me because I think you're higher than that person. Are there any red flags in that, or do you say, that's a great conversation?
You know what? I think that it really depends on, for me, when I meet somebody, the first thing is, I think in my mind, am I working on a lot of projects that this person could possibly be right for? That's number one. And then number two, if I am and I feel that they're commercially viable, because that's part of the business here. It's just a reality. It's a very physical business. And then if I think that, then I will look at the work. And if I look at the work and I'm enthusiastic and the other people that I work with have the same kind of response, I'll give it a shot. That's the best I can do, I don't know any other way to work.
I also think it's important when you meet an actor, if someone comes in and says, I've met Ulrich Delson-Kritzer, and I've met, Mark Sachs, and I've met all of them 3 times, and none of them hired me. What can you do to keep getting me in front of them? That's a tough call. That's a tough call.
What can you do to get yourself in front of
Right.
me? I see.
I have to tell you, and I'm thinking of one actor that I've been representing who was back in New York for about 6 months, and there's a show, help me with the name, Boardwalk.
Empire?
Empire.
Thank you. And there was a part that he was so right for, and the casting people just said, Bud, we've got a long list of people, and my client was so frustrated that it turned out that I knew the director, not well, but I knew the director, and I called the director, and I told him, I said, you've got to see this actor. And he said, well, did you talk to casting? And I said, they just didn't want to see him, but this is who he's related to, and this is what he's done. And the director got him in. Bottom line, the actor didn't get the part. But I have to tell you, the casting people, when they got a call from the director saying, get your client in for this, they said, oh, I'm sorry, we didn't think he was right, but if the director said, we'll see him. And I find myself as an independent agent turned manager doing this today, and I'm sure you do too. You call a producer, you call a director, and you go over the casting people's heads. Fortunately, the casting people, their job is to find actors to meet these people, so they can't say to you, well, I'm not going to bring any more of your people in because you went over our head. But for me, that's the nature of the beast today. I have to do that to try and get people in.
I do think that's part of what we all have to do at this point. I actually have someone who's is a series regular on a series right now who I could not get an appointment out of the casting director. So I called the studio, the person who they speak to, and that person went, what a great idea. And a week later, she had the job. She's been on the series for 2 years now.
Ay, ay, ay.
No,
That's
but
nice.
I think
That
it
happens. That's
and
part of the
it really-
human.
But it really is. I think in Los Angeles, one of the things that is different from New York, or in those days in New York, it was the business of actors, agents, and casting directors. And everybody told me when I moved out here, you have to get to know all the network and the studio people, because those are the people who are important. And that's what I made it my goal to do. And if I felt somebody was really right, or one of my agents felt somebody was right and we couldn't get them in, we always called. I know you do that all the time too. We called the studio, we called the network. I mean, that's what our job is.
But it's also our job to pick our battles. You know, if you're going to call a studio or a network person every time you get told no, they're not going to take your call.
Right.
What do you guys have any specific suggestions for older actors that are re-entering the business after a long hiatus, say many years, 10, 20 years? They're coming back, they did it as kids, they then had kids, they're coming back. Any suggestions for older actors, anything specific you might say?
The only thing I would say is they should try to get themselves in a play somewhere, you know, if they get themselves in, even at, I know people like myself, you know, we go to South Coast Rep, you know, places like that, or, you know, the Geffen, they really have to get a job that somebody can see them in. Otherwise, I don't know what else to say.
Okay.
It happens more, I find, with women. Women leave the business to have children and then decide to come back. And the fact of the matter is women over 40 are already at such a negative compared to men over 40 with the number of jobs that are available. It's, I don't know, you know, you got to get a gimmick somehow. I don't know what it might be.
Okay. Now, this is an interesting question. Let's say somebody, anybody, but in this specific, they're in an older category. Oh, it's somebody here. Her name is Anonymous. So she's in an older category, and you know, but she still looks good. Everything, but now, if you did an internet movie, and in person you're very good looking, but you did an internet movie, and it was not shot well. It doesn't have, you know, good production values. So maybe you don't come across as all that attractive. Do you think they should still use that to show agents and casting directors because it's what you have?
No.
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 Can I get a short answer?
Still no.
Okay. What strategies do you find most effective when you're managing or representing mid-level actors? Can you talk about your strategy with mid-level actors?
Can I get a definition?
I was going to say, what do you define a
Where's the
mid-level
line?
actor?
It's between low and high level. I'm going to say a
Co-star
lot
roles?
of guest star roles. You know, probably on a series regular, say 5 years ago. A lot of guest star roles, small movie roles, mid-level. Does that sound mid-level? Any strategy that you would have?
I've represented over the years a lot of actors and especially actresses that went into their 40s, went into their 50s, even in their 60s. And there's no formula that works twice. Sometimes the casting people will say, we need an old name, you know, somebody that can do these parts. But as the actors get older, and those that are in the audience that know me over the years know the problems that we go through. And if you can find a theater out in Glendale where they're doing a production of On Golden Pond, if you will, Andy, and you find the chance to give them a shot, you then hope that the casting people and the producers in this town are still going to go out and cover some of these shows. But it's become, we all live with it. It's become a problem when the actors are no longer those 20, 30, 40-year-old actors. It's tough.
All right. What advice would you give somebody who has had a lot of primetime co-starring credits, but they can't get to audition for guest stars? Is that a conversation with your agent, or is that?
I think probably the most important thing, you have to say no to the co-stars. You just have to stop, say, no, I won't do a co-star.
And if we're
And wait for those guest star
interesting.
auditions to come.
I love that.
And give it an amount of time, and if they don't come, then reassess. And
Okay, now let's say somebody here can play upscale or blue collar with the same level of acuity. All right. How do they get through typecasting? Should they just pick one type and focus on it? Did you ever tell your clients, look, I know you play both, but I seem to be getting more calls? How does that work?
Well, I've tried it with demo reels, and hopefully when you send a demo reel or put it on the internet and send it over to a casting person, that you have the ability to pick out two scenes. One where it shows
Great.
them upscale, and the other one.
So they don't have to focus. Your agent should basically focus.
with the way electronic, like if you have your scenes up electronically, you can say, watch the scene from this movie where they're playing, you know, upscale, blah, blah,
Blood,
and then
yeah.
watch this over here where he's down and out southern, downtrodden. Just watch those two.
So that's a tool actors should always have for their agents. Stuff
I
online.
just
broken up.
recently,
They have to have stuff.
That's a have to.
Today, it's a necessary,
Yes.
Yep. absolute necessary.
Absolutely.
And it's not a
Necessity.
terribly creative business when it comes to casting. If they've seen you do something really well, they want you to just do that for the rest of your life.
Right.
So the opportunity to break along that is what David said about saying no. If you don't want to, you know, I represented, there were a pair of brothers, and one of them was a character actor, and one of them was a leading man. And they
wanted each other's
starred in
career.
movies, and they were billed above the title in movies, and the character actor wanted to kiss the girl, and the leading man wanted the meaty part that his brother played.
I just recently spent hours with a man who specializes in making videos for actors. And I'm sure most of you know who Constance Towers is, going back to King and I on Broadway with the old Brenner, and had a major career working with John Wayne and all the big stars in the 40s and 50s. Today, she's a recurring character on General Hospital. Well, she wanted to put a whole new video together, and we finally found like 8 different shows that she did, and we started with Naked Kiss, which was one of the Sam Fuller film, and we used a John Wayne clip, and then all of a sudden we worked our way down to CSI and Criminal Minds and Cold Case and the character that she played on General Hospital, and all of them she got older and older and older and more character, and at the end you look at this 70-year-old woman as a drunk, and we've gone from one to another, and she was able to handle it, and we're using some of those pieces today as in hopes to get her out for a film or a television show.
Wow. And that was your, I mean, you sat together and
We've
came
all
up with
done
that?
it. We've all done
Oh,
it. You know,
I see.
We've all done
I see.
these videos together.
We didn't do hers, yeah, it wasn't a group effort. What do you think is the best way to promote yourself, make you appealing to agencies if you're, say, you're in a union, but you're pretty relatively, you're new and you're green? What do you think's an appealing thing an actor can do to get themselves in front of an agent or make themselves appealing to an agent at an agency?
Besides headshots?
Yeah, besides headshots, is there anything you can steer somebody towards or maybe away from doing?
Can't answer.
I think if you can get somebody in the, I don't know about you guys, but a recommendation that comes from someone in the casting community who could hire you and give you a job is very helpful. And casting people, I don't think they go to theater the way they used to, but they used to. There are still some that do, some of the older ones especially, who still go do that. But if you can get an ally on that side of the business, it's easier to get the attention of people on our side of the business, I think, rather than just plastering your mailbox with 100 pictures a week that you're sending out to
An
everybody.
introduction goes a long way.
I think
Yeah,
that-
I think,
Yeah.
I agree.
I meet the
Totally
majority
agree.
of people I meet by referral.
Yeah, me too.
Referral.
I don't.
Yeah.
I've never met an. I mean, we get dozens of pictures
Yeah,
in the
I never-
office every
I
week,
never
and I've
did
never met
either. No,
anybody
me
from a
neither.
picture that an unsolicited picture.
I actually signed an actor from the Mail who was on a hit series
Yeah.
already.
And he dropped it off in the mail.
She
She.
mailed it.
Her first name, no.
And my assistant came in and said, "Is this possible?" I said, "Pick up that phone, dial for dollars." That's what an old agent that I worked for called it, dialing for dollars.
So, someone here says her agent frequently gives her wrong information for auditions. Do you think it's appropriate to let the casting director know that the agent gave that wrong information? And should she tell her agent what happened?
I think it's very important that she not tell the casting director, but that she go to the agent and find out what the chain of command there. Is there an assistant who's been getting the appointments? Is the assistant screwing up? I think that's really what she needs to do. Say, call the agent, say, I'm having a problem. I've been sent on such and such amount of auditions, and they've been wrong, and et cetera, and then let the agent trail it down.
I agree.
Is there any?
Don't bring your drama in the room. Is kind of the moral.
Don't what?
Don't bring your drama into the room with you. They just want to get the job cast. They don't care you had the wrong address,
Right,
you had a
that's
flat
between you and your
tire,
agent, yes, okay. Any prejudice to working with writer-actors?
No, I never even think about it. I'm happy that people have other things that they do.
Good. Can you compare the opportunities in New York and Los Angeles, the markets, and also maybe in terms of getting to know casting directors? Is it easier here or there?
I think it's easier there because you have the theater and casting directors there, unlike, I'm sorry I'm saying this, but it's the truth.
You're on tape.
Okay, I'm not going to say it. Unlike most of the casting directors here, do not go to the theater. So I think that it is easier, and I think people are more receptive to meeting new people. And Los Angeles, I find, is much more star-oriented.
I also think that New York is just a more incestuous business. It's smaller, it's more concentrated. Within the city of New York itself, it's kind of an anonymous creature that exists there, as opposed to in Los Angeles, everyone's in it.
It's the only thing
You
going.
know, in New York, show business is a mom and pop stand. In LA, it's Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. So,
I've used that a lot.
yeah.
Sorry. Did it sound rehearsed?
What? Two-part question. Your opinion of New York actors coming to Los Angeles, A, and B, when do you think is the best time for them to come to get meetings and meet a rep? Is there a good time of year that you have that's open to, I can take meetings, I can meet actors? And do you have a nice feeling about actors from New York coming? Is that a calling card? I'm in New York, therefore I must be a serious, talented actor, or?
Obviously, to us it is.
I
do you
own a
take that for
bicoastal
granted?
agency, and we encourage those people that are
Right.
doing well in New York and have work that we can bank on to
Okay.
come to LA. We encourage it. It's absolutely, we think it's a good thing.
But I think what's changed in the business is that you used to tell people to come out for pilot season, and now we can't do that anymore because pilot season has become so overwhelming that casting directors will not see new people during pilot season. And so what we suggest to actors is they come out sometime during episodic season when it's less crowded, and you can get them generals with the casting directors who will be casting pilots and some of the network and studio people.
And when can they meet you during the year? When's a good time? Any time is okay for
Somebody
agents?
who's
Except usually in the
valuable.
heart of pilot season.
Heart of
I tend
pilot
not
season.
to take actor meetings.
Okay.
The minute I look at a resume and I see credits from New York, the various clubs, I drew us to a blank.
Manhattan Theater Club.
Thank you very much.
The Roundabout.
All of those, I would bring an actor in quicker with those kind of credits than I would coming from around the country and not having that foundation that you get for being a Broadway actor.
Well, what distinguishes clients that you love and enjoy working with from those that you like but maybe aren't as enthusiastic about? Is it how much they work? And this person wants to express appreciation for your generosity tonight.
I have to go back to the 60s and 70s and even the 80s when I was representing actors that went from movies to television and from television to the theater and then back to movies. Today, you don't have those. And personally, I don't spend that kind of time today looking for those kind of actors, what few actors I brought in the last couple times. So it's difficult, but in those days, back in the 60s and 70s, the actors had such great credits. I mean, they were able to go from one job to another, theaters, movies, and back and forth. I don't know about you, Phil, but that's
What
the way
makes you enthusiastic about a client?
Me, I see their work, and that makes me enthusiastic. And within that enthusiasm, I feel like I look at them and I feel like I can do something for them. I can get them opportunities, which is what an agent's job is we don't get people work, we get them the opportunity to get work. And that makes me enthusiastic. Plus, there are a lot of people I like.
Well, when you meet somebody, if you kind of get them, you know, and a lot of people really fine actors, and you meet them and you just don't. It's like, okay, there's a good, but if you really get them, then I think you can represent them with some passion. And I think it's hard to do your job if you don't have a stake in the outcome. Yeah. And the stake in the outcome can't be financial. It's got to be based on the progress and the sort of the organic growth of working in the business and the opportunities that are presented every time you go to work.
So you're then opening the door on the fact that you're actually living, breathing parts of this. You're not just business people filling slots and taking a cut.
No.
You actually have a stake in what's going on.
There are companies that'll do that if that's what you're looking for.
Just take the cut?
Yeah.
Just play the numbers game?
Yeah, exactly.
Can I just tell a story that a casting director
No
told
stories,
me?
Marilyn. No stories.
It's gonna
Okay,
be
go ahead.
really quick.
No,
A
I'm
casting
kidding, I'm
director
kidding.
told me a story, and I'm not going to mention who he is, but he was talking to a young agent at one of the large agencies who covered him in episodic, and the guy kept pushing this guy and pushing the guy, and the casting director said to him, "Well, do you really feel that he's right for the role?" And the agent said, "Well, how would I know that?" That's a frightening story to me, to be perfectly honest with you.
And somewhat common. Now, it's not to terrify you, it's just to educate you. So after all your years in the business, are you still excited about meeting potential new clients, new actors? Is that something you look forward to, or is that a drudgery?
I think it's a great thing. We have a company that has virtually the same client list for a really long time, and every once in a while you meet somebody that's irresistible that you take on for whatever reason. It's going to be somebody different than the people that you have, and it's like having a new toy to play with.
Exciting.
It's a new,
Good.
It's a good.
That's nice.
That's a good. And the other thing is that the people out in the business, the casting community, and the studio executives and the network executives, are tired of hearing you talk about the same people all the time. So every once in a while,
Wow.
if you can throw somebody new into the mix, I think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. David, do you have a feeling?
I was going to say, for myself, having come from New York and still having a New York office, I don't think there's anything more exciting than taking a 22-year-old fresh out of Carnegie Mellon or whatever school you choose to go see their student showcases, and watching them get their equity card, their SAG card, their first job, or becoming a successful working actor. I can't think of anything more exciting.
They're always gracious and appreciative
Oh,
at
it's
that level,
amazing.
aren't they?
It's amazing. Yeah.
All right. Sorry. This person says they work for a manager doing submissions for about 2 years, and it seems that relatively few of the roles they see on TV or in the movies actually came through the breakdowns. Can you explain that?
There's a lot of independent production companies that cast within their office, and you never see it. Maybe 1 out of 10 movies that I see, somebody's casting it within their own offices. They have their own casting director, and they don't put a breakdown out. They just know who they're going after, and they've got a list of 5 actors, and they're going to try. I'm going through that right now with a project back in New York.
Anyone else? No?
I think that we started to get more calls because what happened is with the size of the business, and no offense, but the fact that actors were getting breakdowns and submitting themselves, people stopped sending breakdown services out, and they would start calling specific agents that they wanted to do business with on specific projects because they had become so inundated with submissions.
I know especially from my office today, even with film in particular, we will get a script sent to us. Here's the script. This is who's attached. This is when it's going. And there may not be a breakdown. Many times there isn't a breakdown. It's our job to read the script, give them suggestions, but it's our job to also go out there and make sure we have those scripts and get access to them.
Is there a specific pilot season anymore, or is it all year long? Is there a heart of it, as you mentioned, but I mean, is there?
Traditionally, we're just coming into the pilot season. There's a few of them going around right now, but January, February, March really have always been, for me, the peak of the pilot season.
January, March, right.
But that's network. I think
Yeah.
cable is totally
Cable's all
on
the
their
time.
own. It's on their own schedule. And I was looking at this HRTS dinner, a luncheon they were having, and Kevin Riley was saying that he really is trying to, from Fox, is trying to do away with, he hates pilot season. And they were talking about how the networks are structured now and how they're going to try to change the way they do it and do it in a different way.
I believe CBS just ordered a series that will air next summer.
Just in December, so the pilot in December.
Off-season.
Yeah, right,
Series.
because it's not in the typical, right,
And
September
because they
2.
find that the cable shows air in the summer, because it used to be that everybody thought, oh, nobody watches TV in the summer, and now they find that the cable shows are airing all these new shows in the summer, and they're getting great ratings, and so now they're starting, instead of just doing repeats, and the networks are starting to do new programming for the summer. So the business is in a total state of flux.
Oh,
Well, it's in a state of flux too because of how people watch. I mean, you can watch, on your phone anywhere. You used to have to be home at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night.
I'm going to ask you to break an agent rule, which I'm assuming is an agent rule, and came up with this question. Now, what is something that your agent will never tell you as an actor, but every actor should know? Is there something you can tell us? Is there some inside, something that every actor should know, but agents just won't tell you or won't admit to? Is there a truth?
I think if that really were true, that it would be counterproductive for the agent not to let the actor know what that was
Yeah.
that they needed to know. I don't know what that
Yeah, I
secret
don't
is.
know what that is.
We don't have a handshake or something that we've all agreed not to tell actors.
No, I think
You're
it's
talking
our-
universally? Every agent knows about every
Well,
actor?
yeah, things you just won't say to your clients, but boy, you wish you could because there's a barrier in some way. It would break the trust or it would hurt the feelings, but you would tell a different actor. You can't tell your client.
Listen, it's a really tough job to tell someone you have to lose weight, you have to redo your look, you have to get your teeth fixed, you
You need to get your
whatever.
eyes done.
It's tough. It's tough, but I think everyone here has had to have an uncomfortable conversation. How you do it is probably what
right.
separates the men from the boys.
Bud, can we have that Marlon Brando story now?
Well, telling the Marlon Brando story is kind of like, I'm giving you the tag
Oh.
up front, but it is an interesting story. Many years ago, I got a call from a business manager here in Hollywood who said, do I know Bob Evans or do I know Al Ruddy? And they're making a picture called The Godfather at Paramount. And I said, yes, I've known Bob Evans, and I represented his wife for a while. And they said, well, we have a client in San Francisco that heard that they were looking for an unknown to play the part of the Godfather. And he would like to have you fly up tomorrow as his guest to San Francisco. His driver will pick you up and take you to his home. And he wants to talk to you, and he wants to see if you can't get him on the phone with Bob Evans. So, not knowing who this person is, and they wouldn't tell me, I decided, why not, the adventure of going up to San Francisco for dinner. And I flew up. The man had his driver pick me at the car, and I get to Nob Hill, and I'm looking at Coit Tower as we're getting out of the car, and we go up this back elevator in this 4-story apartment, and as the door opens up, there is this man in a white suit with a white shirt and a black tie, and he said, are you Bud Moss? And I said, yes. He said, I'm Melvin Belli. Now, I doubt if anybody here really knows the name Melvin Belli, but he was truly one of the great criminal lawyers. As a matter of fact, he represented Jack Ruby, who I think was the one who shot Oswald. But Belli was the king of the torts. He was the master attorney. And he believed that if they were looking for an unknown, he could play the part of the Godfather. I go into his apartment, and along the wall there was about 10 pictures, 8 by 10 pictures, black and whites, in a blue suit, a black suit, a white suit. Every picture he had cigars with the smoke curling up in the air, and he looked like the Godfather. So I called Bob Evans' office, and I said, I'm with Melvin Belli. And they said, well, Mr. Evans in a meeting, but he'll call you back in 20 minutes. And I put him on the phone with Belli, and he said, I want a test for the part of the Godfather, knowing that you were looking for an unknown. So they worked it out because it was Melvin Belli, and he flew down to L.A., and he did a very legitimate, a very well test. Matter of fact, he worked with ACT in San Francisco to get him ready for the test. He makes the test, and 2 weeks later, it came out that they've decided to go with Marlon Brando for the part of the unknown Godfather. Well, Belli took off like a 747. He called every editor of every newspaper in the country that he knew and said, if I had to lose out to an unknown, I don't mind losing out to Marlon Brando. Which is in my book, by the way, and all I got was 10%.
Available where?
Go to Amazon.com.
Amazon.com. All right, I'm gonna wrap up, but I would like you all to just give me a 1 or 2 minute prophecy on what you hope the business will become for young actors and actors in the middle of their career, what you predict the business and the world will become for them in your brightest vision of hope and happiness for the days ahead. Did I confuse you? Yes. Did I? A little forecast for where you think young actors are going to find themselves positioned to succeed.
I will start by saying I don't think anyone well, I should only speak for myself. I don't know what the future will hold because things are changing so quickly. I would like to believe that the model that we've been using will continue to be used, just maybe in different forms, that good actors will continue to get the job, and that bad actors will go away.
I continue to think that if this is what your dream is, then you go for your dream because you don't want to wake up one day and think, I didn't even try. It's a hard world, but if you really believe in yourself, then you need to keep on trying.
Yeah, I guess I've never really met a really truly successful actor, successful on a high level, who didn't have an ambition to be an actor that was unquenchable. And there was no way you could extinguish this, that if they had to do this. And I think that one of the things that's made it harder in the business for us, in the technology has made it harder. You know, we'll be lucky if we're actually using humans as actors in another 20 years, I suppose. You guys you'll get paid, you know, $200 a week to put 17 probes on your body, and then you'll act the part, and somebody else will end up. But I think that that passion and that ambition is an essential part of being successful, really successful as an actor. And the better people are at masking that or turning it into something appealing instead of something that is self-aggrandizing and you know, offensive to people, or they get, the more successful they are. And my experience has been that the people that are the most successful do this because they have to. They don't really have a choice. This is what they have to do. And I think our business has been really diluted by a lot of people that came here to do it because it looks easy, or it looks fun, or it looks like winning the lottery because I can make a lot of money quickly. And I think that one of the reasons our business has taken the turn, and I think people that do what we do for a living do that also. I think that the people that, I mean, Marilyn is an agent because she was passionate about representing actors. I fell into being an agent completely by accident and grew to have a passion for representing actors. I think the people that broker a lot of what happens in our business are passionless. They aren't motivated to do it for any reason other than this is what they do for a living, and they try and milk as much economically out of it as they can. And I think if the business doesn't somehow go back to being a business that's passionate and not just ruled by guys with slide rules and calculators and bottom lines, then I don't think the forecast is great, because I think that the things that distinguished good actors and people over the long term that were going to be successful actors, that those criteria are going to disappear, and then it'll be a free-for-all. We won't know. Reality television has done that to a great extent. We won't know what you need to do to be successful.
I would just like to add to that, funny but not really, I think actors in general in the world need to take back their business from people like Honey Boo Boo. I mean it. I mean, or Kim Kardashian or whoever. I mean, they are robbing you of the chance to act with mindless, stupid television.
I agree.
But
You know, last night I was clicking around, and all of a sudden, there was Mrs. Norman Maine on television. The movie Star is Born, the last half an hour I watched. And I started thinking, for those who saw the original Fred McMarch Gaynor film, I look at these people here tonight, these actors, there's not one person in here that I don't believe, with the right agent, the right casting director, the right break, that they're going to at least become a productive actor. The people that know me here tonight, including my dear wife, I represented Rita Hayworth for the last 10 years of her career. And it was before Alzheimer's set in, before anybody really knew that she was not a drunk as everybody thought, but she really had this disease. And we made a business, even though I put her in a marvelous film in Spain, I put together a 15-minute video clip of her great films. Because Rita, as she grew older, was a very shy, very reserved, at times almost afraid to go in front of people. And you would think, God, here's Gilda. Here was one of the truly great stars of our industry. And so I would put together these clips. So we'd go to these various countries, and we'd do an evening of Rita Hayworth and Q&As, and we'd show the clips, and then people would ask her, and we would sit and talk, and I'd be alone with her. And she kept constantly believing. And this, I spent her 50th birthday alone with her in Spain on a movie that we were working with. And they constantly believed that there's still going to be that script, there's going to be that phone call, there's going to that one producer says, you know, let's give Rita Hayworth a shot. And it was for me a gift to have been able to spend time with her and see this constant machine going, that there's still a job out there for her. And sadly, Alzheimer's took her away from us. But it was a great experience for me. So I say this to those people in here this evening, that there's always going to be that job. There's always going to be that script out there that you're going to hope that you're going to get. And I encourage you to stay with it, because as Mr. Kelly said, and my other peers here, it's an industry today that's changing not by the day or by the week, but literally by the second. So we've all got to be prepared for it. We've got to be able to be prepared to go into a casting director's office and look at a wall, and have them just turn on a camera and say, okay, do your scene, and expect that you're going to be able to give a polished performance, so you're going to get that job. But don't give up, because it's a great industry, and I've spent those years in it, and I know that it's still going to be there for the people that are sitting here tonight.
thanks for that, bud. Lovely. Thanks, Bud. Lovely. Great. I guess I don't have to say it. I hope I've asked questions that you wanted answered. And one more time, would you help me thank Bud, Burton, Marilyn, Szatmary, David Shaul, and John Kelly.
We'll do the Nancy Sinatra story another time, okay?
Oh, sir, okay.
Buy the book.